Hello, my fellow degenerates. Welcome to Solomon's Key. I'm your host, Hellspawn. So, about 2 weeks ago, I posted the video designing Zalgo's proxies. That was kind of a disaster. Here's hoping this one is less so. This is part 3 of a series of 5 videos where I designed the cast of Shattered Souls, a reboot of the 2010s webcomic The Creepy Crew. This video will be focusing on the SCP Foundation. It's not as long as the last 2 since there's fewer characters to design and less for me to say overall. A note this time around, while all of these characters are inspired by The Creepy Crew, barring Dr. Schmidt and Simon, they've all been changed so heavily that they might as well be OCs. With that out of the way, let's get started. Dr. Schmidt isn't too different from the original comic, barring him no longer having Einstein hair, his lab coat being closed, and his color palette being white and gray as opposed to just white. His body language and expressions, though, are pretty different. Rather than seeming maniacal and outright evil, the way he carries himself is intended to come across as reserved and calculated. In essence, he's cold and amoral, but I don't want it to feel like he takes any kind of pleasure in what he does. So his posture is stiff, his arms usually close to his sides, and his expressions are meant to be subtle and lacking in emotion and warmth, with very few exceptions. As for Simon, we mostly took what was already there and pushed it further. His skin is pale and ashy, his eye has bags under it, and his body language is, like his father's, very stiff, albeit for different reasons that you'll see later. And that's the Schmidts. From here on out, pretty much nothing is canon compliant, so keep that in mind. Behold, the OC trio. These 3 are heavily based on characters from the original comic, but they've been heavily modified. These are Jessica Watson, codename Lazarus, based on Jeslar, Aban Osman, codename Anubis, based on Anubis Cerberus, and Medusa Unit 417, codename Yuno, based on Medusa, an unseen character. They are Mobile Task Force operatives, high-level security and field personnel that usually accompany regular field researchers, but here act as security for a certain SCP containment facility. Jessica's design is an older, less monstrous version of Jeslar. Her hair is tied in a bun for practicality, and her clothing is intended to fit into the armor for the MTF Operatives with little resistance. Most of her coloring, beyond the gray and black of her pants and shoes, is vivid green and yellow to kind of convey the general vibe that we wanted to give her. That is to say, very cheery and energetic. Aban, however, is nothing like Anubis. Yes, he's intended to have Arabic features as a reference to his old name, but he doesn't look a bit like his inspiration, having neatly combed black hair instead of messy brown hair, brown eyes instead of red, and being very tall and kind of chiseled looking, and preferring more casual wear off-duty as opposed to being a twink in a lab coat. Lastly, we have Medusa Unit 417. She's based on a character with no canon design, so hers is fully original. She's an anomaly detection and containment robot based on Project Medusa being an AI meant to detect cognito hazards. She has a very sleek and minimalistic design, mostly gray on black, but she does wear a yellow sweater based loosely on the character Yamaoka-Silent from Future Diary. Apparently the canon sweater is white, and I don't know how I got white and yellow mixed up, but I like the little pop of color in among all the gray. And there's the Mobile Task Force operatives. I'm really happy with how they turned out, even if they're not much like their inspirations at this point. On the note of the Mobile Task Force, here's their armor, designed entirely by Binary. Most of its design was heavily based on the Outer Worlds, specifically the Riot armor. With the Foundation flair, of course. The colors consist primarily of gray and dark blue, with a little bit of white, and the Foundation logo is front and center. The silhouette of the armor and opaque visor on the helmet are meant to completely conceal the wearer, giving no indicator as to who the individual operative is, though Binary had the idea to add subtle markers on the helmets to differentiate operatives and prevent confusion. There we go, there's the MTF armor. I'm kinda glad Binary took over here, since I would have had no clue how to handle this. I'm no good with drawing tech. Last but not least, we have Chronos, heavily based on Chrono from the original comic. Like Sully, he's an artificial chimera, with a human base and a bunch of monster genetics thrown in. He's mostly based on Tatari Moke, a yokai formed from the soul of a dead child inhabiting an owl, and western dragons. His mouth is very beak-like, and he has a blend of both lizard and kind of goat-like elements, with a scaly tail, yellow lizard-like eyes, 3-fingered hands ending in talons, and legs with cloven hooves. His hair is really messy, and his clothing is fairly basic, with not much color. And that's Chronos, the last character associated with the SCP Foundation. Sorry this one was so short, there weren't very many of these guys to design. Up next will be the Operators, with discussions of Dark World Society. Hope to see you then. Bye!
Na na na.